is inculcated with culture, with a lot of international, pathways, because half of my family settled abroad in the UK and USA. And so there's a cultural exchange which is inevitable. And that has helped me, become a cinephile, a poet, and make better sense of the world, I believe.
This is People and Their Poems, a podcast about the poems that make a difference in our world. People and Their Poems is presented by Oronog Mountain Publishing. Thanks for joining us today.
Welcome to People and Their Poems podcast. My name is Sandy Carlson. I'm here in Southbury, Connecticut, having a conversation with my poet friend, Prithvijeet Sinha, who is in Lucknow, India. So grateful to you for making the time today so that you can share with our audience who you are as a poet, what inspires you to write, and to share some of your work with us to help expand your audience. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation as always.
Prithvijeet, you've been a regular contributor to Oronog Mountain Publishing's online journal as well as to our anthologies. Could you talk, and I know you've been widely published in other Western journals and so on. Would you just talk to us a little bit about what has drawn you to poetry and to finding these outlets to share your work?
Yes, thank you for that question. Poetry, I feel, is a part of my bloodstream. It's what I connected most deeply with since I was a child. When we were given, texts during school hours, or what was part of the curriculum, it was poetry that drew me the most, whether it was Robert Frost. And later on, when I came to college, I actually got to understand how poetry is so nuanced and complex and beautiful through the words of Walt Whitman, Emily Dickinson. Of course, I had Rabindranath Tagore, National Poet Laureate, always with me. But poetry was always something which I aspired to, which I felt was my ultimate calling and destiny. And because I reacted on a cellular and molecular level to it, I felt the imagery that Keats, Coleridge, and other poets, even T.S. Eliot, Tolu Dutt, one of the few underrated poets from our country, what they contributed to the canon, the literary canon, was imagination, a pure imagination which was unadulterated and unencumbered from societal expectations. And when I get to read Emily Dickinson even today, that strain of freedom sweeps me away. And to be in the company of those poets and create was always on my mind. And I started writing in 2015 on the Canadian platform called Wattpad, which was then a self-publishing platform which guaranteed freedom and editorial choices. And I still publish on it, whether it's my prose or my poetry. And that kind of segged into my blog, An Our Voice Panorama, in 2018. So it serves as my official website and my talisman. So it is a story of my life. And in 2018 itself, the moment I graduated from college, after completing my prestigious MPhil degree, I decided that I will take a shot at writing and becoming the poet that I always aspired to. Because till then, I had already contributed 3 collections titled Whistling Chimes, Frontiers, and Words on the Horizon on Wattpad. And I felt that my beginnings were raw, and yet they had the spark of expanding further into a river of thoughts and emotions which could touch people. And the reactions that I got, it was my sister who introduced me to both these concepts, that you should write on Wattpad, you should start a blog on WordPress. And since then, there has been no looking back, because, and my first, written assignment or credit was for Reader's Digest. I published a letter to the editor. And I remember one of my great grandmothers told me that getting published in Reader's Digest, even if it's a letter to the editor, is an auspicious start to one's career. And lo and behold, it happened the same way. I progressed that way. And since then, I got published in Confluence magazine, in Borderless Journal, in so many, I mean, countless journals and magazines, some of which I've been a regular contributor to. And it has only strengthened my journey. And Oronog is one of those milestones which have helped me nourish myself. And every time I think I have a writer's block, I realize that no, I'm prolific and yet I believe in my craft above everything else. Oronog is one of those many, many destinations on this journey of life.
That's fascinating, and I hear you name a lot of American poets and
Well,
poets
thank you.
involved and deeply engaged in nature. And sometimes, and I think topically, sometimes it's the solitary nature of the journey, and yet um, I hear you also saying you seek to be a part of a poetry community. Do those things work together for you? Are you a solitary poet? Can you just talk a little bit about the subject matter of your poetry, and then
Yes.
maybe share some with
Uh,
us?
oh, yes. Uh, as is evidence from my works published in Oronog's Omnibus, I am a chronicler of nature. I'm a devotee of nature. Nature is my launching pad. It is my sanctuary. It is my heaven. And yes, I am solitary by nature, but as one of my juniors in my department back in college told me, I'm also an omnivert, a term which I hadn't heard um, till then, so widely used for an individual poet. And I think I'm an omnivert when I'm with people, but in a sense, I'm a solitary creature. I love to be lost in nature. And one of the poems which you responded so favorably to a few days back today was based on one of my Sunday walks around the riverfront area, which is the most beautiful area of the city. And there was nobody there. And that kind of fuels my imagination the most. How can I make sense of this world? And hence, nature is the guiding force, is my life force in everything that I do. And that is the starting point. And many sociological, socio-political concerns get intertwined with that. Even in that poem, the sheer fact that the adjoining hotels or monuments open themselves up to me is, I think, is kind of a political act to chronicle that, because many a times those hotels, those monuments may not be open for public access to everybody. There may be certain strictures attached to those establishments. But as a walker wanderer, as I like to call myself, and I've used that term in a few of my poems, um, I feel that liberatory freedom that poetry allows me to have and possess really stokes my imagination and it makes me feel younger. So I'm ready to be a graduate student for everybody else,
Oh,
because
that's
that is the
you,
bandwidth I operate from.
I got it. And you talked at the beginning about poetry being in your bloodstream on the molecular level, and poetry is a physical and visceral experience as much as it is an emotional one, and very
Absolutely.
often tied to where we are. You just talked about the riverfront, and I know we've talked a little bit about the history of where you live in India. Would you
Yes.
just give us a little background about the cultural significance of your town, and then share some poetry with us?
Oh, yes. In fact, my first poem, which I will read, will be in Hindi, as you suggested, and that is another one of the welcome, prospects that Oronog has presented to me. So my city, Lucknow, is a cultural epicenter, as I had mentioned in the previous roundtable. It is a cultural epicenter because it arose out of the Mughal Empire in 18th century subcontinent, and from Delhi, the embers of a cultural revolution were stoked back in the northern plains, and it nurtured poetry, dance recitals, etiquettes, mannerisms like nobody's business. Um, and with the passage of time, it has continued to subsist. Um, there are so many poetic, musheras or congregations, as you can dub it in English. And it is where the royal consorts or the royal administrators settled. They were called the Nawabs. Many of them were descendants of the kings, and many of them were family members or, politicians. They ensured that despite the fact that they belonged to the world of politics and intrigue, poetry and mannerisms should be at the center of everything. Everything should be effusive, it should be otherworldly, ethereal. And so there was fragrance, there was food. My city is also known for its food, the kebabs, the sheermas, the biryanis. So there is fragrance in the air, there is an aroma, there is poetry everywhere. And I have to tell you, I'm so glad that I still live in this city. There are so many people who have to move out of their respective domiciles owing to financial pressures and the ways of the world. But I don't think so I'll ever be able to set foot in another city or live in the same way I occupy this domicile, my sanctuary. It is my heaven. And subconsciously, perhaps the city's aroma was everywhere. It's in my alma mater, La Martiniere College, which I shared the pictures of with on many occasions. So it's a city which houses architectural marvels, history, poetry, and it allows one to be with a more sedate pace of life. In fact, in a lot of surveys, the city of Lucknow and the Union Territory of Chandigarh have emerged as the city which nurtures the happiest citizens. And it is a city which, even during the partition of India during 1947, refused to kowtow or bow to the political intrigues from both sides of the border. People still stayed here. There was no, fractions among the communities of Hindus and Muslims primarily. And they nurtured a community which subsisted on being courteous and having a more expansive worldview. And I think so I write better because the city of Lucknow has given me the wings, gusama wings to fly. Oh, that's all right.
Sorry. Um, that's that's really lovely, and it speaks to why it's so valuable to know our personal history and the history of our place that feeds into how we see ourselves. And I think that speaks to a lot of what happens around the world. Thinking in the United States, the whole North South
Absolutely.
dichotomy that and who
Oh,
wins
yes.
and who upholds their integrity in a time of challenge. I think to inherit
Oh,
that
yes.
integrity and honor it is so wonderful. So,
Absolutely.
would you share your poem with us now?
Oh, yes. So this poem is called A Farewell to Bitterness. Uh, it has in its mention a monument, which is also a mosque called Tilewali Masjid, or the mosque on the hill, because it is situated on the citadel. And it was published in the brilliant Live Wire journal or the Wire India. And I'm going to read it now. A farewell to bitterness. Do not give me the support of this bitterness, for I cannot yet prevail. Towards the great mosque's head, you may riddle me with false proclamations for the sake of good faith and his eyes upon you. But do not raise words for the remains, for they won't prevail. The new union with Lucknow, which you have studied well and observed, walk towards the tender cadences of stories old and new. Wage a war against your bitterness on those lanes, for I do not prevail. You too are far from prevailing. I have enclosed Polands and floating straws with my eyes. They emerge in the arms of by lanes with doors and boats. Look, I have trampled memories with the mud and dust in this bitter colony of seasons. Now I have gathered my desires to prevail, for both you and I are still far from prevailing. Leave behind crutches of bitterness, for this city prevails again. Let us craft poems from these straws and shared vocations anew everlasting poem. Thank you.
Wow. The walking over the tender cadences of old and new. I just the images and what you do with time in that poem is really really lovely.
Thank you. It is actually one of my earliest poems. I wrote it back in 2015 in the very first collection called Whistling Chimes. And since then, it has found a lot of life. I've published it on my blog slash official website. And of course, when it became a part of Livewire back in 2020, uh, it really gave it a new lease of life. I felt that the poem resonated widely with readers, discerning readers at that. And now, with this recitation, I think it has occupied a place of immortality.
I think so, and this lovely invitation to leave bitterness behind, and the image of
Absolutely.
the journey is very beautiful. Would you have
Yes,
another poem for us?
absolutely. Now, this poem is very exciting to me. It has not got published anywhere apart from my blog and my Wattpad collection called Frontiers, the links of which I've shared. So, this monument is a monument which I visited last year. I had heard so much about it. It was like an outlier. It is mostly in ruins, but the sheer beauty of its architecture and historical character has stayed firm and intact. It's called Musa Bagh, and I'm going to just read an prologue to what the structure is. The historical monument Musa Bagh, situated in my fabled hometown Lucknow, is in near ruins in the current state. Yet, there is something wholly liberating, grand, and unencumbered about it. It is more than a relic, a monolith extant in the present day, a picture of the past telling us about Lucknow's longevity. Hence, yours truly was inspired to write about it after a visit to the site in February of 2024. Here is the eponymous poem that I present to the world. Musaba. When religion alights unholy fires and burns the body, come here. Sprinkle cold water over these yellow sands and witness the gaiety of this place. It varies in its mannerisms from the city's mainstream. I hope these remains of the day don't readily get entrapped by the rains, but we are ready. We are ready to search for this fiery language breathing on these platforms. We soon discover this place bears a different melody. It is not a votary of fame. It does not follow the city's fabled paths and is situated in an area of distinction where our silent sentinels become order of the day. On a first visit here, the legs will traverse a path over the structure's uneven stones and bricks. The legs will mount the high steps when atop this mound and feel an airy pathway making its way, and the eyes will be struck by this ruin's beauteous features, impressing on our vision hidden secrets with the proficiency of legends. Praise be to its undaunted freedom. Praise be to its unguarded, austere silence, with broken hands directing us towards its strength. Its fiery colors hook us to this place, a monument, an untouched beauty. To me, it is a city's last open chamber. It courts the moon on an open dais, but never pulls it down like a kite to flood the night. Like a friend reciting his songs, warm and cordial, it patiently entreats the sun and us. It says, come here. I don't have doors and windows, and it is up to you to overlook the thickness of lichen frozen on my walls. Come here. Leave your beautiful impressions on a silver plate, the silver plate reflecting the sky. Come here and instruct all the voices in the well to come out of the interior palace. Only then will they repeat legends and folklores and embroider details about this vast land of freedom. You come in my dreams or in my vision. Come in my dreams or in my vision, for when the stars course through our inner world, the sky must be an open slate, and make your hidden beauty reach us anonymously. Stay unique, stay silent. Always be the city's upstanding sentinel within its final flanks. Thank you very much.
Oh my goodness, that's gorgeous. I love that image of hooking the moon without pulling her down. This sort of balance
Thank you. Thank you.
and that monument has a place in Lucknow's history, right? Of
Yes.
holding its own and the fight
Yes,
for
it was a
independence.
site of resistance for the First War of Independence, but before that, it was a summer house. It was a house for leisure, for activities. And I tell you, it was situated right in the historical corridor of the city, which is called the Husainabad corridor. You take a left turn, there's an overbridge, and then you go through this crowded market of Tupagga, as it is called. It's a very famous vegetable market. And next to it is the old city, which holds so much of history in it. And then suddenly you come upon this serene piece of land which is open, synonymous with freedom. There are no structures, and there on a mound, and you mount those steps, as I've mentioned, there is Musaba. And it has structures which are like open pavilions and
Mhm.
huge pillars. And because it's in ruins now, it has these holes which look like eyes, and they seem to peer directly at you. For a poet and for an observer, it is the most fascinating monument. The image of it on only one visit hasn't left me. It seems I was destined to go there, and it has entered my body. In fact, I've written a fictional piece on it, a narrative piece called On the Perpetual Road to Lucknow. I've sent it to Hammock Magazine and a few other publications. Let's see who approves it. Uh, it was all about this trip, and it really opened my eyes to so much that remains untouched. And it's really a virgin site. And I feel that because it's not so polished, even in ruins, you can see the sturdiness of its architecture and its beauty. It truly blew me away. It was so, and it was an inclement day in August when we went there. And so it was fascinating. And I felt it helped me write this poem. It could not be the poem that it is without the majesty and the intimacy of that monument.
It's amazing. Your descriptions, in addition to your amazing poem, make me feel like I'm there and want to be there. You know, I last summer I traveled to Ireland with my daughter Adela, and there are ruins all over the place. You know, Norman
Absolutely.
ruins. That they are ancient, and yet they take you back in time. And
Absolutely.
I look at them sometimes, and I think they have broken down over time. That's what makes them ruins. You know, what's it
Yes.
like generation after generation to live with those subtle transformations, but also to respect it? It has a right to be there, and it's a part of the
Yes.
history and the story. Um,
Absolutely.
such a rich and beautiful poem. Both of the poems you
Thank
read,
you.
you are directly addressing your audience. Do you have a particular audience in mind when you write, or is it just the person who lives outside of your mind?
I I want my poems to be as universal as possible, because when I read this poem or when I read this poem, I feel that many people could connect it, such as the example that you shared. So if we can have a connective tissue between Lucknow and Ireland, we can trace the history of both places as being ancient nations with their own theologies, with their own histories, and of course, the architecture that lies in vast open vistas. So, what you exemplified through sharing your trip and its grandiosity and yet intimacy is what I try to do with my poems. Of course, when it reaches the local people back home and those people from the city who maybe settle abroad and feel more than a pang of nostalgia and more than a sense of nostalgia, a sense of belonging back home, it's a great feeling. But I want my poems to travel as far as possible because words have the transformative, transportive power. And that's what I intend to do. And this poem was one of those same efforts to spread the fusion of poetry everywhere.
Got it. And speaking of words and language and experience, I mean, you're incredibly versatile, sensitive, and is also home. You are, I want to say, bilingual, polylingual. We
Mostly
talked about this
bilingual.
previously. Yeah, that you don't. We asked about your creative process once upon a time during one of our roundtables, right? And
Yes,
you
yes.
compose in English, or can you just talk about language and the languages you know, and which what's your go-to for writing?
Um, I speak Hindi, of course, because it's a native tongue. And I'm not going to say it's a native tongue throughout the country because India is a land of diverse tongues and
Hmm.
dialects. They change with almost every few kilometers sometimes. And but Hindi is a connective language, of course, just like English. So I write in English because it spread its tentacles everywhere because people responded to it on a cellular level. The
Hmm.
language reached out to them. And so I write in English, but I also write in Hindi and Urdu, as I've shared on a few occasions earlier with the Orinoco family. And Urdu is a composite of Hindi and,
Hmm.
of course, the Persian languages, which evolved and they evolved back in the subcontinent of India itself. So it's a local language and it's so beautiful. It's perfect for poetry. It's perfect for enunciation and for effusion. I'm going to use the word effusion because it's one of my favorite words, but also because it finds a home in poetry more than anything else. And because of my maternal and paternal lineage put together, I also speak and understand Bengali, which is another beautiful language. It has often been voted as one of the sweetest languages in the world, which it is. Rabindranath Tagore was a Bengali poet from the state of West Bengal, a state which is a shorthand for literature, for art, self-expression, and intellect. So if you come across a Bengali individual, you know you are in for an intellectual conversation, for something which stirs your mind and heart and soul. So I have that pedigree because my family is full of people who had nurtured intellects all their life. My grandfather was a professor who was called to England because of the excellence in his field. My father is a sportsman, but he's also a great extempore narrator and writer who helped me write my first essay on getting lost in the jungle back in the third standard. My mother was a school teacher. She was a graduate, a master's in English literature. And my maternal grandfather was an Indian administrative officer who, as my mother tells me, and I've seen his journal writings, he was a great writer and he possessed one of the most beautiful handwritings, something which my mother possesses too. Great cursive handwriting. So there is a pedigree which has passed down, and I come from a family which is inculcated with culture, with a lot of international, pathways because half of my family settled abroad in the UK and USA. And so there's a cultural exchange which is inevitable. And that has helped me, become a cinephile, a poet, and make better sense of the world, I believe. So that is, in short, the trajectory of my life.
That's really something, and I'm just thinking about how being aware of your history, walking those paths around your city, noticing what's around you, and also bringing the same awareness to the people who populate your life. Um, that paying attention that you do, I think, contributes to the sensitivity and the insight that comes through in your poetry, and there's just sort of an epic sense to
Thank
them.
you.
Like they will stand the test of time because they are born with
Hopefully.
a deep sense of time. Um,
Thank you.
have you composed in any of the other languages that you speak? And I'm just wondering if you would share
Yes.
something with
Oh,
us.
yes. When we talked about this podcast session, And because for me, it doubles up as a very genuine author's profile also, and it will help me disseminate my choices and my influences with the wider world out there. And so you know, as you can see, I'm an old-fashioned person, so I believe in the power of paper. And so I got all my poems printed in A4 sheets. And the first poem which I read, A Farewell to Bitterness, was something which I wrote in Urdu, or the Hindustani language, as I just mentioned it to you. And it's called Talkia. Talkia is an Urdu word which translates to bitterness. And with your permission, I'm going to read that poem
Oh,
with honor.
thank you.
तलखिया इन तलखियों का सहारा ना दे मुझे कि मैं अभी आबाद नहीं टीले वाली मस्जिद के सिरहाने दे मुझे भले ही शाबाशिया पर उठाना तू अल्फाज जो बर्बाद सही जो अभी आबाद नहीं लखनऊ से जो नया सरोकार है जो तुमने भी सीखा है परखना उसी नए पुराने मध्यम अफसानों की राह पर तू अपनी तलखियों से कर जंग कोई कि मैं अभी और तू भी अभी आबाद नहीं तिनके मैंने भी आंखों में बंद कर लिए हैं दरवाजों और दियारों वाली गलियों के गिरफ्त में जो पनपते हैं धूल मिट्टी से रौंदी है यादें अपनी इस तल्ख मौसम के मोहल्ले में अब तो मैंने भी आबाद होने की आस छोड़ी नहीं कि तू भी और मैं भी आबाद नहीं छोड़ इन तलखियों का सहारा कि ये शहर दोबारा आबाद हुआ है चल उन तिनको सहूलियतों से चुने हमें गजल कोई एक गजल नहीं शुक्रिया that is how we say thank you in Urdu. And I am so over the moon that I got this opportunity to recite this poem. I was itching to share this on a platform such as this, and my God, God has granted me that wish. Thank you, Sandy ma'am, for this opportunity more than anything else.
Oh no, it's an honor. It's also very exciting and humbling to hear the music of another language and
Oh,
to
gee.
know what it says without knowing the words. It's really impressive. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Did you have anything else you've written that you wanted to share with us on this podcast?
Yes, I have a trio of poems. If you allow me to read a trio of poems, they got published in Paisam Literaria Journal. Now, Paisam is an institute based in Lucknow, which was started by my beloved professor, Dr. Anu Nial, and it is dedicated to the care, upkeep, and betterment of neurodivergent children, autistic children, and the specially abled. And so she started a journal, and she very graciously invited me to become a part of its journey. And one of the poems which I'm going to read, A Scar, was partly inspired by my trip to Musabag, and it has also found mention in this wonderful new journal called Everscribe Journal or magazine. So I'm going to read a poem called The Deer. It is absolutely autobiographical, based on facts, and I'm going to read these poems, beginning with The Deer. The Deer. It all happened not so long ago. 2011 is just a whisper away. I remember red marks from the southern belts imploding kettle on our necks and foreheads, the aggressions of a stolid and unforgivable Mayday on a bus ride, and the sea blindingly bejeweled before us. How it was so much like a mirage to us all. But I remember most the kindness of a convivial stranger who saw me staggering on my feet, the fresh pelt of pain making me sit on a tiny seat in the animal reserve which we were visiting. Hugh paced with consideration, halted, tilted their soft antlers towards my legs, and showed me love, sitting alongside this distressed young boy of 20. It was your kindness they could not tolerate, and so one of them, younger than me, gave a hard tug on your delicate tail. You ran a bit too fast for me to catch your reaction. By then, the human mass was stampeding back, bringing with it a contempt for our shared pace. We were gone. I remember the pain that had come to my legs that day, and the heat made me hit the ground. There was still something so enchanting and soft and uncalculated about you. You had comforted me, and kindness never actually expires when even when it is shunned and mistrusted. It was you, one of a kind, moving like how God may move among humans, giving an injured body the solitudeness to walk back without staggering on its misery. And I've walked back with gratitude towards that day ever since.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Um,
Thank
just
you.
that the kindness does not expire even when it's shunned, and that the kindness came through the gentle animal leaves me speechless.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I still remember that deer.
and I don't think it's anthropomorphism to say that animals are kind or have the
Absolutely.
capacity for emotion. I think it's human chauvinism to believe that only humans are capable of that complex.
Humans are not capable, on the contrary, most of the times. But
Yeah.
yes, and I'm so glad that we talk about the spirit world and anthropomorphism in many of the conversations and around tables, because what this deer did to me is going to stay with me for the rest of my mortal life till my last breath. This look of compassion on that deer's face. I'd suffered an injury on my leg, and we were in Chennai, in the extreme southern belt of the country, and it is known for being the hottest regions of the nation and extremely humid. And we were by the beach, and there was this animal reserve which was started by a British gentleman who is now settled in India. And everybody had left for that sojourn, and I chose to stay back of my own accord. This deer saw me, it came towards me, comforted my legs with its antlers, and sat next to me for at least 20 to 30 minutes before this young, naughty, nasty boy, Dennis the Menace, came and gave a hard tug on his tail, and the deer ran away. It was like a flash of godliness, and I truly believe it was. I've had many experiences, even while writing poetry. So when you talk about the spirit world, as you talked about last time, during Shannon ma'am's poetry and during Naomi ma'am's poetry, I feel so validated because I believe in that. And it is no mumbo jumbo. It is no shamanic ritual, no voodoo such as that, no gobbledygook. It's pure and pristine. It's internalized. And
It is, and I think anybody who spends time in nature understands that. I think
absolutely,
it is, and and I think the vulnerability that kindness requires comes through in that injury that the deer sustained for daring to come near you and be accessible to that Dennis the Menace. That you
absolutely.
can't be kind and safe. It doesn't always work that way. I think
Yeah.
sometimes yeah, it's risk taking. It's risk taking.
No, no, no. I completely agree with what you say because kindness does not guarantee you uh, more than safety, a kind of kinship with others. I've bore the brunt of that for most of my life, but I continue to be kind and compassionate. That is my political stance,
Yes.
without engaging in anything, reactionary. That is my only personal and political stance: to be as kind and compassionate. And with the passage of time, I feel that the judgment of others bear nothing on me. And I think so that's the evolution that age brings, and which engaging as a creative individual brings, because you're so inured and enamored with your creative process that you do not care about others' indiscretions and misjudgments and miscalculations. And when you have a community like yours nurturing that, it becomes a crucible for change, a silent change.
Yeah, we hope. Then all we can do is keep going, right? And I share your
Absolutely.
politics with you. I think it's the only way forward.
Absolutely.
So I think you had something else there too, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Uh, this should be the final poem for this evening, and it's
Okay.
in two parts. One is on a brown sandal, and the other is on a metro. And I say that because I wrote these poems almost on the same day, and the kind of parallel the experiences and the worldview of a poet. The first poem, and they are short poems. So the first one is called A Scar. There's a scar on my brown sandal, akin to a star sign. I think it's beautiful how even the break in the leather tissue has a certain poetry to it. A tiny inner white thread has started to show up out of that earthy crack, like a seedling intent to sprout in the most extraordinary space of its own. It is the visuality of it, the poetics of it, my eyes transferring pretty possibilities to this mundane item that could have been condemned and thrown out. But now, after the first drops of delayed rain have opened up the skies for a long term engagement with our plains, I'm certain that flowers will grow out of that tear in the outer surface. I'll leave it out on the stone. It will house a green empire soon within it. An innocent bunch of shoelies will probably find its cozy little bed in it first. You don't pray for these things, they happen intrinsically in nature. That is the miracle. And shoelies refer to jasmine. And the last poem is called The Metro, inspired by the metro trains. A paperback or the subways, the metro. A paperback has been left on your seat. Many hands have twirled their forms around your overhead poles, and a bitter moon has sliced its favorable portion to show itself as a grey embodiment of its nightmates. It is you who's an insomniac, your poetry held within casual earshot of the engine, always raring you to go to the next stop. It is the monuments you glimpse that have your schedules imprinted like crossword on a Sunday paper. They do not begrudge your bastion of invention. They don't tire of your obligation to traverse your routes and look past them. It is the nature of your material. You must never stop. Your journey has only begun. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Wow, well, those two poems capture two interesting journeys, and they showcase your versatility in the subject matter and such an able use of metaphor.
Thank you.
And thinking about the sandal with the crack in the leather becoming an empire for green life, I immediately
Oh,
my mind
yes.
to some work I did the other day in a nearby nature center, removing invasive plants and
Yes.
discovering a fallen tree that had been reclaimed by moss and was becoming a nurse
Yes.
tree. When new seedlings emerge from the decaying bark because it's a rich
You
source.
share a photograph with two young volunteers on your Instagram page.
Oh yeah, and that's the work, and it's just and it also you could be frustrated your shoe is broken, but also delighted that what you have can contribute to life continuing.
Absolutely.
And the way in the Metro poem you honor the built world as well as you did with the poem
Yes.
describing the
Yes.
poem. And I'm just grateful to you for sharing your poetic journey with us today. It's
Thank
really
you.
amazing and beautiful and so culturally rich and engrossing. I just can't wait to read more and more of your poetry, and I'll be so glad to put the links to your sites in the podcast notes. As a last word for people maybe thinking about poetry and should they even give it a try, do you have any suggestions or recommendations?
Um, More than a suggestion or recommendation, my only insight will be to believe in yourself if you truly want to be a poet. If you feel you have the inclination and the tendency to write, and you have the felicity to transfer and translate vision into reality in the form of words, just go with it. But be pure in terms of who you are as a person, and I do not mean that from moralistic standpoint. Be pure in the way you view the world. Be kind. Be compassionate. And poetry will automatically stream into your whole body like sunlight during a clear morning day. And I mean, my journey is going to take me towards the point where I will have my first solo book of poetry titled A Verdant Heart being published by Bookleaf Publishing. I wanted to share that too with you, especially before with anybody else with the world. And it's going to happen perhaps in late July or early August. And I just want to tell people it took a long time. in the traditional sense of the term, because I've been writing since 2015, but I think all the milestones on the way to this, particular individual book, because I've been a part of anthologies, including ones from Orenol. But this individual book had to have this particular point in time to germinate and become a part of our lived realities. And so never lose hope. There will be people who will tell you that, oh, you're a poet, you're a dreamer, you're a wanderer, you do not belong in the real world. Conversations which still exist in this evolutionary passage through time, which we call the most enlightened period of the world, but it is not. But stick to your guns. And I'm very stubborn. My mother tells me that you are a virtuously stubborn person. Like Mr. Lewis, who was a civil rights leader, John Lewis, he made good trouble. And so I think you should make good trouble with your creativity. You should be stubborn. I'm going to write, I'm going to make that book a reality, and I'm going to make that reach as many people as possible, even if it is just 50 people at first, spreading the word out by word of mouth. And so more than advice or a suggestion, I would just say, be very truthful to yourself. In this fractious world, being truthful to your creativity and imagination, which is God's gift, and which is a gift that you can give to yourselves, is everything that requires your patience, your hard work, and above all, perseverance. And poetry teaches you perseverance more than anything. It's the most hard work that you will commit to in your whole life. Some people may think otherwise, but don't give them much notice. Give them a short shrift. Give them the leeway to perhaps come towards your corner. And that's my only message to discerning readers and poets of the world, old and new. Do not go into the constraints of age or time. There is never an age, there is never a time. And always nurture your dreams. They will come true, even if it takes 10 or 50 years. It doesn't matter.
Thank you. That is beautiful advice, and I think, and so succinctly and well said. So thank you very much for your time, Prithvijeet. It's been an honor to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you so very much. God bless.
This has been People and Their Poems, presented by Orenog Mountain Publishing. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to check the show notes for more information about this episode. Visit OrenogMountainPublishing.com for more information about our services and writing opportunities. And visit peopleandtheirpoems.net to learn more about the podcast.